Jolly good, thank you very much, Julie. So, welcome this evening's Cabinet, Monday the 16th, here at the Council Chambers, and welcome to those who are in the Chamber, those in the public gallery, and those that are online. If we can be authorised, please, to sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of May as a correct record of proceedings. Yep, jolly good. Thank you very much. Apologies for absence, Julie, please.
So we've had apologies from Councillor Girwan.
Thank you. Are there any additional agenda items?
No, there's none.
Urgent decisions?
No, there's none.
Thank you. Disclosures of interest and dispensations. To receive any disclosures by members of disclosable pecuniary interests and other registrable interests, non-registrable interests in the matters on the agenda, and the nature of any interest, details of any dispensations obtained. Members are reminded of the need to repeat their declaration immediately prior to the commencement of the item in question. Rory.
Thank you, Chair. Just declaring an interest in the housing development strategy as a trustee of Bexhill Community Land Trust.
Thank you very much. Are there any Yes? Beverly?
Again, the housing strategy, I'm on the board for the Rother District Housing Company, and I'm also a Sedlescombe Parish Councillor.
Thank you. And Carl, I can see your hand up. Good evening.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I will put the camera on, but it's bath time at the zoo here, so apologies for that. I would say, because I think when it came up at scrutiny, it was mentioned specifically, so I think agenda item 7, possibly agenda item 6, but if East Sussex are mentioned, obviously, as an executive member, non-pecuniary, just a personal interest, East Sussex County Council.
Jolly good, thank you very much, and enjoy your bath. Right, let's see, where are we now? This is the first item. Oh, beg your pardon, Hazel, sorry.
That's okay. Item 8, member of Bexhill Town Council and also a director of Old Town Occasions up at Manor Barn.
Thank you. Are there any other? No. Okay, let's move forward then. So the first item, forgive me, is item 6. And this is the final report of the Housing Development Strategy Task and Finish Group. And I think Graham has joined us this evening to present this report. Graham?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, proceeding from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting, recommending that this strategy be brought forward to Cabinet this evening. The progress of the strategy started back in January last year, in many ways, at that event at the Manor Barn that I'm sure a lot of you attended and remember well, where we brought together a wide range of stakeholders from across the district with an interest in housing development to start to understand the challenges and opportunities for increasing the amount of affordable, social and market housing that is built in Rother. The energy of that event was then carried forward into our task and finish group process. We had 8 task and finish group meetings in total. Initially, bringing stakeholders again together to articulate the challenge that they experience in developing homes in Rother and understanding what we can do as a local authority to help overcome them. We then proceeded to narrow down that information gathering process into understanding the themes and the priorities for the strategy. They have remained, the themes themselves have remained largely in place since then, and are those themes really that you see in the strategy today. We were then able to create the draft housing development strategy, which was sent out for a full public consultation, to which we received a good level of response and have been pleased with the stakeholder engagement, particularly in that strategy consultation. The strategy was then taken back to the Task and Finish group for a final approval to understand any further amendments they wish to make, and there were few, so the strategy has arrived as you see it before you today, largely. There are 3 themes to the strategy. So a thriving development sector, supporting our communities, and taking an active role in new development, with a set of objectives underlying each theme. There will then be a more detailed action plan to demonstrate how we will meet those objectives. We'd also need to consider the effective resourcing of delivery of this strategy, which is something that I'm working with Joe to bring forward in due course. I'm happy to take any questions, Chair, maybe rather than go over details that members are already aware of.
Thank you very much, Graham. Rory.
Thank you, Chair. No, it's a really good strategy. I commend the officers and also Altair who worked with us, and also the Task and Finish group as well, chaired by Councillor John Barnes. It was a collaborative effort, cross-party effort, and I think it's something that the whole of the council can lend their support to. It sets a framework for us in going forward and hopefully increasing the supply of housing so that we finally make inroads into the misery of homelessness and insecure housing. There are challenges, undoubtedly. I mean, the area of national beauty, the High Weald, is 83% of Rother. We live in a low-wage and a low-skilled workforce along the coastal area. And there's one stat which came out, which I thought was, I mentioned this at the Overview and Scrutiny group as well. 44% of new households earn less than the threshold to afford the lowest quartile of rents in Rother, which is quite shocking, really. But there are things to take forward and be optimistic about. Blackfriars, of course, will be coming online, and that's a really good achievement by the housing company. I support the themes. I think the themes are good. They're cogent, and they'll enable us to facilitate more housing locally. I like the idea of bringing sites forward, which have been perhaps stalled in some ways. I like the emphasis on shared ownership and building development capacity within the council. But moreover, what I'm really pleased about is the theme, I think it's page 9 it mentioned, where I quote from it, finding more ways to deliver new council-owned, affordable and social housing, and the return, hopefully, of the housing revenue account. And I think with local government reform, it may throw up certainly possibilities and opportunities to reopen the account at the earliest opportunity. But obviously, since then, we've had the spending review, and I'm really delighted that the Labour government has, unveiled this radical and historic new departure from the governments of the past. There's the funding that has been released, 39 billion over 10 years, a massive 70% increase to the current affordable housing programme, which is to be welcomed. I think the issues such as discretionary housing payments are going to be replaced by 842 million crisis and resilience fund, which is good news. I like the fact that social rent convergence is going to back on the agenda, and that social landlords will be able to raise their rents by CPI plus 1%. That's returning, and it's ending years of uncertainty for social landlords who really, their business plans are predicated by their main source of income, which is rental income. So the fact that that has been, is more security. 950 million will be invested in a 4th round this year of local authority housing fund, and 100 million on early interventions to prevent homelessness. And overall, an additional 233 million in 25-26 to prevent homelessness. So I think this is a real game changer. As I said, it's radical and historic, and it'll enable everybody in the housing sector is pleased with this. I don't think there's a bad thing we can say about this. We just got to get on and deliver. That really is the issue. Every government is judged by its achievements, and therefore this is great news. And I commend the strategy and thank you all for producing it. So onwards we go. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Rory. Are there any other comments to be made from within? Sam?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think just on a equalities and wellbeing perspective from my portfolio, I think this is really, really positive. And I thank the officers and Councillor McCaw and the steering group and Overeem Scrutiny and others for looking at this in a really positive way about how we improve the lives of our residents, because even going as far back as our anti-poverty strategy and things like that, one of the big drivers to people being in poverty or in disadvantage, in ill health, all of these sort of co-factors, one of the big things is housing and a lack of good, affordable homes for people to live in, which I imagine every single councillor on this council has had residents contact them in unsuitable accommodation, or because their landlords have kicked them out, or at least they once the no-fault evictions is finished, that should hopefully reduce. But nonetheless, various issues, people in unsuitable private tenancies that are too expensive for them and not maintained well, that sort of just, and there's nowhere to go, and the social housing list is long. So all of those problems will be fixed, or will be greater sort of solved with a strategy like this that really looks to be bold and proactive in building homes. And as Councillor McCourt says, I think it's been supercharged by the really welcome sort of decisions by the new Labour government to sort of push for building. Build. That's the message. Thanks, Chair.
Good. Time will tell. We hope that there will be the outcome. Yes, Councillor John Barnes, I think you were chairing the Task and Finish group, John, and thank you for all the work you put into this, because I think that...
I was indeed, and I really would like to thank the officers supporting that group, Graham Quinnell, and the consultants from outside Altair, also Joe Powell. What I wanted to say was Joe's department is already beginning to move in certain directions that we anticipated, and it seems to me that we can do quite a lot more ourselves in the few years left to us to actually get this moving, now that the government appears to be willing to put large sums of money behind Homes England. The last government's programme has come to an end. The new government's programme was announced in the statement last Wednesday, and these are sizable sums, and if they come our way, I think the council can make very good use of them to actually begin to address the housing problem. I'm despondent about the way housing associations and indeed the private sector at the moment is responding to market conditions. So the role of the housing company and the role of Joe's department become increasingly important in the near future until the economic situation begins to encourage the private sector to take more of a hand. We're lucky, I suppose, in Bexhill that North East Bexhill seems to be progressing, but it's an instance of how long that has taken. The planning permissions that are being implemented now are about from 2015, and we're now in 2025. So there's an awful lot to do, and not a lot of time left to do it, because we are really facing, as Rory said, a fairly major disparity between incomes, house prices, and rents in the private sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you again, John, for leading the task group. And if I could ask Councillor Paul Osborne. Paul, as Chair of Scrutiny, you led this forward.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Again, without sort of repeating anything, I would just like to sort of thank the officers and John and the members of the Task and Finish group for the work they carried out on this. I think if we look on page 58, just above the resolution, at the last scrutiny, I said just that. I thank members and officers for the work in producing the draft housing development strategy, and that the work of former Councillor Chas Pearce, who sadly had to resign from the council, retire from the council, but he put a lot of time into it as well. And his hopes that the successor body to us, Bromley District Council, will use this document going forward, because they're not going to have their own probably for many years. So you know, it's not something that's going to sit on a shelf or get lost or shredded. This is a good document that can go forward and help anybody who takes over this area in a development strategy. So that's all I need to say, Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Paul. Are there any other comments? No, there are not. Rory, are you going to move this report, please?
I formally move it, Chair.
And second? Aaron, Stan? Yep, fine, thank you. And those in favour? And again, I think we've got a very good working document here to go forward. Two things, time and money is the thing that's not really perhaps abundantly clear at the moment. Right. Okay, next item 7, the recommendation of the Airbnb Task and Finish Group. This is a report of Una, who's here this evening, Environmental Health Manager. I'll hand over to you, if I may, Una.
Thank you very much, Chair. The Task and Finish Group was brought about to answer a few questions. There was a great feeling among elected members and among residents that the proliferation of short-term holiday lets, particularly in Canberra Rye and Winchelsea, was seen as unfair. They were seen as a group that weren't complying with various legislation, including waste and health and safety. So the group was put together to look at this as an issue, to look at maybe what controls we as Rother could put on it, and maybe what the future looked like. So we met 4 times and we did lots of research and we spoke to other local authorities, and we have estimated what the numbers of short-term holiday lets in Canberra Rye and Winchelsea are, and I totaled that at 251. We also then looked at the issue of second homes, but second homes, of course, are slightly different because, of course, they have had a premium of their council tax applied to them since the 1st of April this year. Now, the news from our research is that the Department of Culture, Media and Sports have announced a mandatory registration scheme for all short-term holiday lets, which they are hoping to introduce before the end of this year. Now, I think this really was the game changer for the project because, of course, it shows where this issue is going to go. So no matter what local authority you are, where you are, this will happen. So the registration will be digital. It will be connected to all digital providers of short-term holiday lets. And of course, we as Rother will be entitled to access that platform to have a look at the details, so I can examine the details and then start applying whatever controls are appropriate to be applied. So that's really the headline from the project. I think the second headline was the perception that we found very much from the public survey, which we got a terrific response to. We got, 442 people responded to it. That's terrific. It shows serious public concern about this. And they were saying that they really believed that there was a connection between maybe higher rents, poor quality housing stock, with this issue of the provision of short-term holiday lets. Now, what we discovered in our research and by interviewing various people involved with the business is that actually these two things are conflated. They're actually 2 different issues. They're not the same issue. They're 2 different things. We live in a part of the world that's very desirable to live in. Land is in short supply, and frankly, communities are quite dense in places. And house prices are in line with national prices. So they are 2 different issues. But I think I really appreciate we have put a list of recommendations in front of you, Chair, from this report. But I think hopefully it should see its way forward through all these various recommendations relatively smoothly and quickly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Una, are there any questions from members within the chamber or online? Doesn't appear to be. Hazel?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Una, and thank you to everybody on the task force for all the work they did with this. It uncovered a lot of different viewpoints and a lot of misfacts that we've now cleared up. I just want to refer to recommendation number 7, where it says the council work with the local hospitality industry to research ways of encouraging tourists to stay longer than 1 or 2 nights. And that's always been a big issue in Rother. The longer people stay, the more money they spend. And research that we have done in 1066 marketing, we have a long way to go with that particular issue. But I will pass this on to the executive board as a recommendation that you've made. But just so that everybody understands, 1066 marketing is funded by us and Wealden, and they are a separate body. We don't have any control of them. However, they do a fantastic job. We've seconded a young lady called Alice Geraghty as the tourism marketing officer, and she's doing a fantastic job. And the current campaign, there's a big campaign happening, 2025 campaign, which will launch probably June, July, and then again in autumn. And it's going to go across multiple channels, because traditionally it was just the rail and the airports and billboards, etc. But now with Alice on board, we're on TikTok, we're on Instagram, we're on everything. So I think this particular issue here with the staying 1 or 2 nights, it's very key to our success and the tourism industry in general. So I'll definitely pass that on and come back to you, Una, with some response from the board. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Hazel. Before I ask you to move the motion, there's a couple of hands up. I think there's Carl.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. Only just to say, to redeclare my personal interest as Executive Member of East Sussex County Council. I think I did the same at the Scrutiny Committee. Thank you.
Christine.
Yes, thank you. And I thought this was a really good task and finish group. I sort of have a bit of a shared interest in this. This is a main, tourism is a main element of our economic development strategy for the district. And I just wanted to say that a lot of these issues that you found in Rye and Winchelsea also apply to Bexhill, and that was part of the reason why I'd come along. So just in the last week, I've heard of a Airbnb now closing. Actually, it's going back to being a family home, but it's closed. And of course, we've had not an Airbnb, but we've had the closure of the Northern Hotel in Sea Road, and that, you know, the reason why that has closed is it's a business that's, you know, that's no longer, unfortunately, viable. So, as I say, you know, there is this issue, I think, right across the coastal areas. I mean, I think if you talk to councillors from Hastings, they would probably say the same thing. Our MP has set up a hotel task group, which actually is meeting on Wednesday, and he's very kindly invited me onto that, along with a couple of hotel operators locally in, obviously, the Bexhill and Battle area, as opposed to the Rye and Winchelsea, because that's obviously a different constituency. So there is some work that can be fed back from that, but it is a serious issue. I visited a glamping site a couple of weeks ago, and the occupancy rate is down from 35% last year to 34% this year, and it's really serious. And there's people's jobs and livelihoods that are involved here. And I know I've talked to Councillor Timpey about this, and I know how seriously she's taking this issue as the lead member for tourism. So, thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Catherine, Councillor Field.
Yes, thank you. I think this was an an interesting report, and I was particularly pleased to see recommendation 9, because I do think that short-term holiday lets have the potential of removing from the housing stock smaller homes, particularly that young families and downsizing older families could usefully live in a community, thus releasing larger homes and also making people able to live in their communities, often where they've grown up for all the good social reasons we know, and go to work from those communities. And all the time, those small and desirable houses in lovely places are being taken out of the housing market and used for holiday lets. I think it's very much the detriment of our communities and the long-term well-being and economic growth of the district.
Thank you for those comments. I think most people would endorse those. Paul? Councillor Paul Osborne?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. It's a shame that Councillor McGurk's not on the call. I can't see his name on the call. He was the chairman of the Task and Finish group, so if he's not here, then I'll speak up for him as chairman of scrutiny and a member of the Task and Finish group. I think it's a sort of a moving beast. Una and her team put a lot of effort in trying to find these lets, if you like, and not just across Airbnb, but Vrbo and holiday cottages and hotels.com and all the rest of them that advertise. And I think what we found, it's a moving beast, and at the moment it's still moving, it's still changing. And we've seen it sort of across Spain and Tenerife and Barcelona, where sort of the city governments are sort of cracking down because there's so many of these holiday lets that no one can live there anymore. I don't think we've got to that stage. Obviously, we haven't. But I think there was probably a COVID bounce, if you like, when no one was allowed to go abroad back in sort of 2020. The world and his uncle was stuck in the UK. And what happened was there was a massive, all these people had money in their pocket to spend on a holiday, but they couldn't leave the country to do it. So at any one time, I read there was an extra 3.5 to 4 million people in the country went on a holiday. So everybody sort of jumped into the Airbnb, the holiday lets, the Vrbos, sort of market, and that's possibly saturated itself, as Christine has said. Places are closing, places are changing. My son's an estate agent. He's got a lot of houses coming on the market where they were sort of holiday lets bought for that reason. And now they're sort of, the market's dropped off, so they're either selling it or going to just let it out full time. So it's changing, and we've changed, the taxation regime as well. The government are changing regulations, as Una said. I think in the next sort of couple of years, we could see a change in the market, and it could sort of drop back to something that it used to be. There was always a holiday let market, but I think it ballooned. And then it's sort of going down the other side of the mountain, if you like, and it might just sort of go back to a bit more normality. But having said that, Rye is now a tourist destination. That's it. It's no longer a market town, arguably. It's a tourist destination. And if you look on any website, it's always there. Every newspaper's got a reporter who's been to Rye, although you read the report and you think, well, did you come to Rye? I'm not sure, really. It's a different town than what I live in, but there it is. So, but there it is. So yeah, hopefully there's a number of recommendations there. We're going to look at these again in sort of 6 months, 12 months time and see how the change is coming, especially with the change in second homes, the doubling of council tax, to see if that sort of frees up places. And the whole idea of the government changing that was, if your house is going to be sitting empty, it's going to cost you twice as much money. You may as well sell it and let someone live in it. So if that changes for the good, then all well and good. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for those comments, Paul. Very interesting. Councillor Barnes. John?
Yes, I wasn't going to speak, but I'm afraid one or two of the remarks that have just been made, not by Paul, but by others, worried me slightly. because I think what the Task and Finish group identified was a much more complex situation than the simple one of an interchange between holiday lets and young people finding accommodation. And I am a bit cautious. I hope we will also keep a watchful eye on Cornwall, which is somewhere ahead of us in this game. There are hefty changes to the tax regime going on, which may have impact. What worries me is the tourist industry is fairly fragile at the moment, and there's an awful lot of employment in it, not merely direct employment, but people who clean holiday houses and who actually change the sheets there, do the gardening. So one's got to be a bit chary about rushing in when what the Task and Finish group found is that it's a pretty complex problem and we need to move with caution. It's also, as Paul said, a very dynamic situation. The picture has changed quite radically over the last 2 or 3 years, and I think it's likely to shift again. So we need to stay fairly flexible and quick-footed on this one to make sure we don't do harm by measures which we believe will do good. Incidentally, I have noticed some holiday lets now illegally accommodating full-time residents, which is quite an interesting new departure and not one I've seen in this area before. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, John. There's some interesting comments as well there, which I'm sure will be taken note of. I think we're at a point where we can move this report. Hazel?
Yeah, move to accept, thank you.
Yes, and second this report. Thank you, Christine, and those in favour, and that's unanimous. I did recall that I think you quite enjoyed the research into this. It was quite a good opportunity to delve in forensically to get out a lot of information. I think this will hold us in good stead going forward, so do appreciate that, and of the members of the Finishing Task Group. Thank you very much indeed. Whoops. Okay. Can we move straight into... there's going to be a lot of comments, and I think it'd be appropriate to do so. So if I can just say that the next item agenda 8, we will go into confidential session on this in view of the sensitivity of some of the comments and the discussions that I think will be coming forward.
Do you want me to introduce the item in open session?
I think that would be good, Chair.
If you would just introduce the item under open session, and then we will convene under confidentiality.
Yeah.
Thank you, Christine.
Right, okay.
Sorry, Chair, can I just disclose again that I'm Sedlescombe Parish Council? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. So this is the final report, I think, in a sort of long series of reports about how we deal with our public toilets. And the most important element of this proposal, I think, is that it will deliver public conveniences that are managed, cared for the long-term future and at no ongoing cost to local taxpayers. We're also generating some new local jobs for people and as well as introducing some interesting service amenities for the public to enjoy. The process was designed to demonstrate whether or not there was a current commercial value in the buildings. It follows that there is now proven nil interest. It follows that where we've proven nil interest, we can justify devolving to local councils. And this is the case for Couden Beach and the Gorselands car park and toilets and Monk's Walk in Winchelsea. So wanted to erase that. Now, in the case of Lucknow Place, there was a bidder that had been rejected, but we've amended their lease requirements, and now we have an acceptable potential letting for Lucknow Place, and I want to bring that forward under the confidential item to be agreed, and I will obviously go into more details in the confidential session. I mean, I understand that there's a degree of scepticism involved. The businesses will cease to operate the public conveniences element. The leases are going to be really specific in that the toilets must be available during the opening hours of the business. Closure of public conveniences while operating the business will be a breach of the leases and will mean that the leases will be wound up. The other issues that's coming up is less conveniences less often. So there will be a reduction in the sort of a number of toilets that will be available. But the all year round looking after the toilets, but having somebody there all the time will result in a much, much better service, I think, to the public. There is a sort of concern about cash businesses, and through the council, through the letting agents operate within the anti-money laundering regulations, including customer due diligence checks, and we will be asking for references. In addition, each client, each tenant will be represented by their own solicitors who must know their client and carry out appropriate checks. That's really an important point to note for those people who've raised issues around that. In some instances, the additional space that it will provide, it's been carefully considered and limited to minimise any conflict with adjoining users. So I know that members will want to discuss the table, which is at table 1. So I request that we move into confidential session in order to address those. But I just wanted to highlight those issues and concerns that have been raised and how we intend to deal with those in open session. So, as I say, if I can move that we go into confidential session.
Can I have someone to second that?
Yeah.
Yep, and we're in favour of moving into confidential session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're back in public session now, and I invite Councillor Bayliss to propose an amendment to the report, item agenda 8, and this will be item 3, I think, in the item 1, 2 and 3, yeah?
Right, thank you, Chair. Yes, so the recommendation is that the Cabinet resolve that on number 1, it's 12 public convenience buildings as set out in table 1, as we've discussed in the report, are approved for lease on the terms set out in the confidential appendix 1 to businesses that will provide public conveniences at each location, and the Chief Executive be granted delegated authority in consultation with the portfolio holder for regeneration and economic development and section 151 officer to make amendments to the final lease contract terms as required and advise local members. And number 3, that members note that officers will be undertaking due diligence process prior to entering any lease arrangements in the normal way, including to ensure that all prospective lessees have proper legal representation in place. And I hope that the minutes of the discussion will include some of the sort of additional due diligence that we've talked about, i.e. personal references and business plans. Thank you. So that is proposed.
that concludes the meeting this evening, which is closing at something like 8:27. And thank you for those that have been attending tonight's meeting. Thank you.
We lost the sound on that just then, Chairman. So I don't think, for the sake of the recording, that people will know what happened.
Oh, I beg your pardon. The amendment was passed on a vote of 5 with 2 abstentions. 5-4 and 2 abstentions.
Thanks very much indeed. Thank you.